Hey everybody, it's Michael Shelton here, visual effects supervisor with Pixomondo. And I'm really happy to be here today talking to you guys and sharing with you a bit of the stuff that I do and get into, most importantly, things that you guys can be doing if you share similar interests, be it in film or gaming. There's a lot of crossover and overlap there. So let's dive in right now. So right now up on the screen, what you guys should be seeing is you should be seeing the homepage for the company that I work at, Pixomondo. Feel free to go and visit them at pixomondo.com. One of the things that is important that I wanted to get across to you guys today is really just, there's so many different ways to get into doing this for a living. And to be honest with you, you don't have to pursue this as a career. You could just do it for fun, be it making films, or for no other reason than to make art on the side, or however you choose to use it and stuff. There are literally endless applications for content creation these days. So the big thing I want to talk to you guys about today is things like software, how to get access to it, whatnot. In this day and age, there are free versions for students of pretty much everything that we use in production. And the way that they're limited is pretty minor. So they don't prohibit you from actually creating any imagery. They're just, they're limited in ways so that companies aren't able to use them to create work without paying for the software. So, and that's a huge evolution in the software from when I started, which was quite a long time ago, well before we actually used computers to do effects. Back then, the software was really, it was pretty brutal. It was like, take the worst case scenario of homework you've ever had and multiply that. You really had to have a bit of a computer science background to really grasp it, and it took a while to evolve to where it is now. But these days, with the amount of information that's on the internet on how to use the software and tutorials, as well as great resources like Thirsty Minds, that information is out there, and so there's a lot of help available. So what is a visual effects supervisor? So basically what my job is I oversee the creation and a lot of the design of what goes into a project. I work with a team. Sometimes it's a couple people. Sometimes it could be a couple hundred people if it's a film. And it just sometimes it requires a small army of people to create everything. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you guys a bit of stuff I would say is like under the hood, which is some kind of making of. And kind of at the end of this, I'll take a break and answer questions. So it's definitely, if you have things that pop up while I'm talking, you can just shoot them onto the Discord channel. And at the end, I'll take some time to answer your calls, but your questions. But please definitely ask lots of questions. That's why I'm here. And the other thing too is I'm going to put together a page where you guys can go and access things like links to the software and resources that could help you move along and make things a bit easier for yourselves. So without further ado, so Pixomondo, so we are a fairly decent sized company. We have 8 studios across the planet. Our headquarters is in Los Angeles, which is where I'm based. And we have a company in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Stuttgart, Frankfurt, Shanghai, and in Beijing. So 3 in Canada, 2 in China, and 2 in Germany. So we're a global company, and it allows us to take on projects at scale. So films that have a lot of visual effect shots. It allows us to be able to handle lots of work. We do a lot of movies. We do a lot of TV series. Probably the thing that we're the most famous for or well known for, is the dragons on Game of Thrones. So if you guys ever watch that show, those dragons are most likely things that we have done. So the first thing I'm going to walk through here is I'm going to walk through a breakdown of a project that we did last year, which is pretty cool, and it was called Midway, and it's about the World War II Battle of Midway, and we worked with one other company to provide all the effects work, and I'm going to just let this play, and then at the end I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we have done on it. It is a bit self-explanatory because it does show sort of the layers of all the things that went into it. So there you go, quite a bit of stuff. Now, if you would like, you can always go also to our website, and if you click on this Vimeo link right here, it'll take you actually to a breakdown page where we have a lot of the projects that we've worked on, and very similar reels. That's what that was right there. So, you know, if you're curious, take a look. We do definitely work on a lot of very cool things, and this page is one of the ways that we showcase some of the things that we do. Not just for clients, but just because it's fun. It's fun for artists to see their work displayed in this way. And, you know, so much goes into the creation of this work that it's really nice to see breakdowns so that other people can really see the layers, and it's pretty neat. So let's talk a little bit about how we do this work. We use primarily a program called Maya, which some of you may have heard of. When you're learning, the big thing that we look for when we hire people is we look for people who understand mostly just the concepts of things, more so than maybe what specific software program they use. Maya is the one that we use a lot, but we also use 3D Studio Max, and I know that there is a class offering for that at Thirsty Minds, and it's very well worth looking into that because 3D Studio Max has a rich history of being used in the game industry. It was predominantly the software package that was used the most for the longest time. So a lot of companies have built their architecture and their pipeline around using 3D Studio Max. And when you look at all the different pieces of software, they essentially all accomplish the same thing at the end of the day. They just really take a little bit of different ways of getting to the end result, what have you. And, and the reason why the adoption of 3D Studio Max was wider in games is because Maya was really built as a film tool. And it was also fairly cost prohibitive in the early days for film studios to invest in Maya. So 3D Studio Max had a very wide user base because it had been out for a very long time, and it was reasonably priced. And so there were a lot of people who knew how to use it. So how do you as an artist proceed to move up to the next level, or even to get into this at the very beginning? And what I would say about that is that keep in mind that as neat as this stuff is, as complicated as it is, everybody involved in this work, me included, we all started someplace. We all started from, kind of a blank page. We had to take that first step, and then we had to take that second step. And, really that's building a foundation. And you start at places like Thirsty Minds, and you start by taking classes to learn a little bit about, here's a class on modeling. Here's a class on, whether it be in 3D Studio Max or in Blender or whatever else. The thing about it to understand is that, it's teaching you guys fundamentals that you will build upon. And with all the information that is out there, and the tutoring and the coaching and fellow artists who are very generous with their time and their knowledge, you can really advance, as rapidly as the effort that you put into it. They're pretty much so on par with each other. So, certainly the more you put into it, the more you get out, is very true in doing this kind of work. A lot of these examples are, again, they're film-based, they're movies, they're TV series and stuff, but the principles are still very similar between film and game. In that example we just watched for Midway, all those ships and those planes and all that stuff were all modeled, and the way that they were created really didn't matter which software they were done in, for the most part. And so I would never say, you should ever get hung up on what choice you make as far as where to place your energy into, and time investment, because at the end of the day, you're going to come away with a good foundation, because we can always train people on different kinds of software, but we can't give you that fundamental knowledge if you don't have it to start off with. So that's why it's kind of very, very important to take those steps in order. Like it's really enticing to sit down and go like, well, I want to model the dragon from Game of Thrones. Well, of course we do, because that's cool looking and stuff. But if you haven't really built a foundation, it's going to take you a long time to get to that place if you skip all those steps. So it's really important to kind of take it in, in stages, like start with things that you can accomplish and then build upon that. That's what we all do. And that's how, the people whose work was in that clip I just showed, as well as myself, that's how we got to where we are, is that we just started at the beginning and made our way step by step through this process. You don't need to be, a computer scientist or a mathematician these days really to get into this line of work. You just need to have a love for what you do, and the willingness to put in the time to learn how to get there. So speaking of games, the next thing I'm going to share with you guys is this is a bit of some under the hood stuff. So when I was talking about games versus films and what have you, there are a lot of instances where there's overlap where we work with game studios. Sometimes we create the commercials for their launches. I'm sure you guys have seen them on TV. They've gotten more and more elaborate as the years go by because they want to make a really big impression on people. So they a lot of times pull out all the stops and they want to just go really big and show really fantastical scenarios. And so a lot of these trailers start to look like movies in themselves. One I'm going to show you guys right now is a sneak look at sort of like how we put together the in-game cinematics for the game Destiny. And this was something that we worked on, or actually that I had worked on at another facility back in 2015. So I'm going to let this play, and I'm going to play through it. It's an in-game cutscene cinematic, and we will get into some of the how did we do that afterwards.
My queen, you were right. The Guardian was the key. For the first time, the whispers are silent. It is done. I have accepted my fate. I will not fail.
All right. So what that was is when you're playing the game, you reach a certain point and you defeat Oryx, and this cutscene plays, and it's essentially something that we were approached to do to create this cinematic for Bungie. And the way that we went about doing it is we built everything in Maya, and I'm going to show you guys a comparison of what that looked like the finished piece next to sort of like our work in progress. So you'll see actually a lot of gray shaded models, and it's very much so kind of like an under the hood look at what that looks like. So there'll be some differences because one is a finished product versus one that was still actually in development. So there'll be slight differences that eventually got to the point where the similarities were gone because we made the final version of it. So this is not the actual final version of our making of, but I think it's interesting to look at. And here we go.
My queen, you were right. The Guardian was the key. For the first time, the whispers are silent. It is done. I have accepted my fate. I will not fail.
So there you have it. So basically the screen on the right is our working version of what we call a previs. And in that this is how we build the edit. This is how we set our composition. And then this is working inside of Maya, where we figure things out, and we it's like it's a big sandbox, so to speak, to where we try a lot of different things out, and that's how we kind of find this story. And so we set these up as shots, and we edit them together, present them to the client, and then we get notes back, and we fine tune it from there to the point where they're happy with it, and it ends up in the game. So when you're looking at this stuff, again, it's all things that, were made primarily in Maya. And I want to say like a week or so ago, you guys had a speaker, Craig Dowsett, who is a modeler who actually worked on this project with me a few years back. So, he is a great example of somebody who works all over the place, does some stuff for game companies, does some stuff for animation. So there's no limit to how you can actually use your skills. You can work in film, you can work in games, you can work in architectural renderings. Again, make your own movies. It doesn't really matter. But it all starts from fundamentals of just learning how to do something. This shape that's on the screen right now, this crystal, that starts as a cube, and then it's extruded, and it's, you're pulling points, and you're just working on it until it arrives at this shape. But it all starts from that really simplistic form. The next bit I'm going to show you is some of what was our effects development on this, and this is just kind of like what it looks like to us when we're working on the effects part of it. And so that's just the stuff that's coming off of his sword. He's capturing this taken energy, smashes it into himself, and then he gets all ripped apart. All right. So I am going to check and see if you guys have any questions so far. Please feel free to ask. I'm here and I'm happy to answer anything that you have. Really what I'm looking for is, anything that you might be stuck with. Hey, I'm having trouble doing this. I'm not sure what to do. Just let me know, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction. The other things I will say about this work, and especially for like my part in how I got to where I am right now, is it started really simply. I began working in effects. I was still in high school, so I was still pretty young. And back in those days, we did not use computers to do effects. We built models and we built puppets, and it was a very different type of thing back then. And it evolved into what we now see movies being made with, these very complex characters and these great environments and things like that. And it took a while because the software was in its infancy, and the computers that it needed to run on were extremely expensive, and everything about it was pretty complicated. And so you really had to be a specialist to understand how to do things, and just the cost was astronomical. So it took a while for things to really fall into place. The earliest films, we really started to see a very wide adoption of computer graphics. Were the first Jurassic Park film with the dinosaurs, and that film actually had very few visual effects in it. But it was one of the first times where the audiences were really seeing something that was very well integrated. That didn't have some of the jerkiness of stop motion puppets, or didn't look like things that were out of scale. They felt like they were really there. And once that happened, everybody wanted to have that kind of stuff in their films, and it was just off to the races from there. Personally, for me, it took me a while to want to make that transition, because I loved making stuff. I loved, sculpting things. I loved having an actual physical object in my hand to work with. So it took me personally a while to transition, and I wasn't somebody who was very technically literate in that way when I got into it. So when I'm talking about taking those steps in order, I made those mistakes instantly, where I was like, well, I want to make a dragon. I want to make Godzilla. I want to make something like, really, really, really cool, because I could do that on the practical side of things. Like I could take a block of clay and turn it into something really cool. And naturally, I wanted to be able to do that digitally as well. But I quickly, really discovered that you really do need to, learn how to take those steps and strides. But in this day and age, with having access to the software, and you don't really need to have computers that are super high performance. When you're just first starting out, the gains you get from that are not going to be really quite as noticeable as they are when you get deeper down your path. So what's really I think that's enticing about this, and this is sort of something that I would say is good for the parents, is to understand is that this is it's a great career path for certain. But B, it doesn't require an investment in a bunch of high end equipment or software. let that evolve. Start with what's there, start with what you have, and make that time investment and get to a place where it's justifiable to look at where to take this next. Before you know it, you're going to be having a skill set where you're going to be applying for jobs at Blizzard or Bungie or any of the game companies, or at a company like Pixomondo. But it's just important to not get overwhelmed with it. Take the time, learn the fundamentals, do some tutorials, sign up for classes, and just explore. I have been doing this kind of work for so long, and to this day and age, I still wake up loving what I do, and I can't believe somebody actually pays me to do what I do for a living, and that's something that I hope you guys find as well. All right, so I'm going to take a look at some of your questions right now. So I have some questions about what are my thoughts on Blender. Can you share with us what the production pipeline looks like at Pixomondo? And absolutely. So I think these are great questions. So first of all, I'm going to address the question about Blender and talk about the Max Maya thing. So Blender has come a very long way. It is, as you guys may or may not know this, it's a free piece of software that was created by visual effects veterans that wanted to put something out there that was free. That I think initially it wasn't necessarily to compete against some of the other software out there, but it was just really, you find these clusters of people that just are relentless tinkerers and just like to put their energy into stuff like this. And this has evolved as a tool to the point where it is a legitimate piece of software. So, Blender is used a lot for concepting, a lot of concept artwork being done in that, which is a very important stage in the process. And there are people out there making really great work for it. So what do I think about it? I think it's excellent. And I think that pursuing it is a good use of time, because what you're doing is you're still learning fundamentals, right? You're still learning how to model stuff, maybe how to animate things. Okay. And the difference between how you do it in Blender versus Maya, Max, or Houdini, or any of those other things, it's very negligible. I don't even know how to use Blender very well, but I downloaded it to play around with it based on what I was seeing in Thirsty Mind Camps. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just do this and learn a little bit myself. And I was able to pretty quickly grasp it because I had those fundamentals, So, I would say don't stop pursuing that. And as far as of Maya and Max, you can get this as a student license, which means you get it basically for a whole year. I am not entirely sure how it's limited, but it's a fully functional piece of software. And the limitations are probably going to be on the rendering side, like you can only render at a certain resolution. I think other than that, it behaves exactly like the versions that we would have at Pixomondo. And again, I'm gonna make sure that there are links to exactly where you go to download this software. The other options are you can get a 30-day free trial, which is a completely unlocked version of the software that has no limitations whatsoever. It just times out after 30 days. So, my recommendation is to use the student license and at least get to a point where it warrants getting into the 30-day or even renting the software. So it is all still quite expensive to own, even though it is far less by an order of magnitude of what it used to cost. It's still out of reach for a lot of people. So in answer to your question, Blender is fantastic. 3D Studio Max. So we use at Pixomondo, our primary 3D application is Maya. We use that for all of our modeling. We use that for our animation. But we also have a 3D Max team as well, who do exceptional work. And Pixomondo, in its early days, all the way up until about 5 or 6 years ago, primarily used 3D Studio Max. And so a lot of the team that still use it, they create amazing work. You know, I use Maya primarily because its animation tools just work better for my purposes, and I've been using it since before it actually became Maya. So my familiarity with it is much different, and what have you. And going to talk about pipeline. So our pipeline is pretty robust. The way a pipeline works, for those of you that aren't familiar with what that means, what that process is that a pipeline is essentially like a highway of moving things around, right? So when we start a project, we start by building models, and then we have texture artists and we have rigging artists that will put the control systems into the model so that we can animate them. We have lighters and we have compositors, and all of those stages require assets to be handed over to them. And what is an asset? An asset is like a model. It's a an entity that gets passed that from sort of like process to process to the point where it becomes the final image that you see up on screen. So we use what's called a pipeline to do that. So a modeler will create something, and they'll pass it on to the next step in the process by publishing it. And what a publish means is it just basically packages everything up and puts it in the right place, and names it and does all the things. It should check the geometry to make sure that there are no problems with it, and it lets the next people in line to receive that know that, hey, this model is ready for texturing, or this model is ready for rigging, and so on and so forth. So our pipeline is built around using Maya primarily. We use a software called Houdini for our effects work, and so all of our tools are based around how do we move assets from each individual software package, how do we share things, and then how do we ultimately deliver to the client the finished shot work that ends up on screen. So hopefully that that answers that question. It's something I can tell you this. It's something that is it's like the central nervous system of a studio, because when it's not working correctly, it gives you a heart attack. And I can't understate or overstate, I should say, the importance of it. And we have an entire team dedicated just to making sure that all the tools work. All right, so let's see. We have what does a successful portfolio demo reel for special effects look like, in my opinion? So excellent question. So let's say you want to apply to Pixomondo. Generally what's going to happen is that your demo reel is going to come across my desk and the desk of our other supervisors. And what happens is we'll take a look and we'll watch a reel, and then we will sort of give our opinion as a group, because we are very much so, we're very tight knit there, and who we bring in is it's important for a lot of reasons, because it's not simply what the quality of the work is, but it's also, are you, somebody who will fit into the company, meaning like, are you somebody who handles pressure well? Are you somebody, who is good at communicating? Because those are the things that really are, for me, a big component to what a successful candidate is like, I interview people, and generally it's the work needs to be up to a certain level, obviously, to work at a studio like ours, only because our schedules are can be very demanding, what have you. And so while we do take in junior artists all the time, and we encourage junior artists to apply, there are certain, there's still a certain threshold that we look at that you need to make it to. So, to really answer your question, what I'm looking for personally is I'm looking for, like variety in a demo reel. You know, it's it's always great to show your best work, not necessarily like, we don't need to see the very first CG thing you ever did. If it's a ball bouncing on a floor that's on fire, don't really need to see that. But it's really good to see things where it's like, we get a sense of how you did something. If you're applying as a modeler and stuff, we love seeing really nice ZBrush sculpts with paint overs and stuff like that. But we also kind of want to see, like, what is the topology of that looks like, so kind of peeling away something like an onion, so to speak, very much so like the Midway demo that I showed you guys earlier, where it's like, if, like, let's say that was an artist that was applying to Pixomondo, and they're like, okay, here I worked on this film. And if they were to just show me the final shot, where it's the planes bombing the ship or whatever, and I looked at that, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. But if they showed it to me in the way that sort of we present our work, which is like, you start to strip away the different layers so we can really see what is under the hood, that goes a long way. When you're working on projects, you don't always have access to that kind of thing. And a lot of that just has to do with what the policies are of the companies and stuff. And, it's really good to show, as much diversity in your work as that you can. If you're modeling, have some organic stuff and some hard surface stuff. That always goes a long way. So, it's really like, work on things that are fundamentally sound. If you're gonna, I use modeling a lot because, in a lot of ways, it's something that is, it's something that is generally done by just you. It's not like showing shot work where it's like, hey, here's a shot of this plane bombing this ship. What part did you do? Well, I did the animation of just the tail flap. And, when you're looking at the shot and there's all this amazing stuff going on, you kind of really need to know what specifically that person has done. Because I get a lot of demo reels that are really impressive. We look at a lot of demo reels of people's work that are really impressive, that are, massive scenes with, monsters rampaging through cities and knocking over all this kind of stuff. And, and when you get kind of down into it and you realize, well, what exactly did you do? It could be like, well, I painted the texture map on the hot dog cart that got stepped on that you only saw for 2 frames, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but, then just show us the hot dog cart as an asset or something, or put it in context of what it was that you actually did in the shot. So let's see. I joined late. Did you go over how you guys built the dragons for Game of Thrones? Did not actually go over that. But the dragons, they evolved over time because we got involved in Game of Thrones, I'm going to say starting on season 2 with the baby dragons. And we stayed on it until the very last episode. So, we also did, we did the shot of Dragon melting the throne, which is, that's kind of what all those seasons leading up to was for that moment, so it was pretty cool to have done the biggest, one of the most iconic shots in the whole series. But, like with everything, it starts very simplistically, and it gets built, up into, what is a fairly complicated model. It has a full muscle system, has more controls than you could possibly know what to do with. the team that worked on that, always did, just the most amazing job with it, and the detailing that went into those models and the textures, and you know, it stands a reason why we are so proud of that work, because those are like little masterpiece assets. So, pretty much so, like anything we get involved with, we look at, well, what does the character need to do? And then once we have a good idea of that, then we'll define sort of how we build it. Like how, is it something that needs a full muscle system? And just to explain what that means is that, nowadays, we really want our creatures and our characters, whatever they are, it kind of really doesn't matter. But we want them to feel alive. And, there are little subtle things that are out there that really help trick the eye in that, which is, things like your skin sliding over muscles, and how what does your elbow, the inner part of your arm look like when you twist it or you flex a muscle and stuff. And by actually building a full skeleton and muscle system, when we move things around, it deforms in ways that makes us feel like this thing is alive. When it's moving, you get a little, jiggle underneath the neck and the gut and stuff like that. So it really infuses life into these characters, and then when you put an asset like that into the hands of a really talented animator, they truly do bring that all out and stuff. And, I feel like that was really apparent in the work that we did. So, the screen I have up right now. Now, this is not a breakdown reel of the Game of Thrones stuff in the same way that the Midway breakdown reel was. But feel free to go onto our Pixomondo site and click on the Vimeo link, and it'll take you into this breakdown page, and you can kind of scroll around and see some of the stuff that we've worked on. And Game of Thrones is obviously featured pretty heavily because we're pretty proud of that work. All right, so let me do this now. So I wasn't really, when I was talking to Joe about doing this, I was sort of thinking like, well, what would be the most useful thing? Because I wasn't really going to do hey, this is how you build something. It's not a class or whatever, but I did want to show you guys some stuff within the software, just so, just for fun, and to, hopefully, again, get you guys inspired to push forward and, seek out this information and practice on your own. The things being taught at this camp are things that do matter, that can lead very easily into bigger things, and I'm very much so speaking from experience, again, with my job, I am certainly somebody who interviews lots of people. And, the whole reason why I got involved with this is because I love what's being done. I love the focus of this camp, and certainly I will continue to be involved with in teaching some classes down the road. And I know there's a lot of very exciting things in store for Thirsty Minds. So, I think it's going to continue to grow, and more people like myself will be involved, so that there's a very wide ranging choice of classes and things like that, and just like people with all different backgrounds that have things that they can contribute. So So let me go ahead and drag this guy over. So we talked a bunch about Destiny, and the reason why I kind of use this for a lot of what we were talking about is just because I was able to find this and stuff, and it's also really cool. I love playing that game, and I had been playing the game long before we ever got hired to do the cinematic work on it. So it was kind of really neat to be involved in it. But what this is that this is just a file from we were doing a trailer for E3 to promote the launch of this particular chapter in Destiny called the Taken King, and this is what the character looked like and stuff. And this is just what my animation file in it and stuff. I wanted to have him do some kind of like big crazy roar. I'm here with my big sword, and I'm going to do some horrible things to you. And so pull out of this and kind of see the environment. And for those of you guys that joined this a little bit late, I will show you guys a bit of that cinematic again, just so you can kind of see it in context of this layout. So, but yeah, this is generally what we would be working on. So we have that whole. Sorry, I keep disappearing into the geometry of these pillars. So let me zoom out a little bit more. All right. All right. So another question: do we have internships at Pixomondo? We absolutely do. Absolutely. So these are all things that I would say will be part of the information I'm going to put together that I'll get out so that you guys have access to it, that has links to the software and links to Pixomondo. And also just resources, like things that I feel like are useful. So, it's not just things that have to do with the company I work for, but just as an industry as a whole. Pixomondo is a fantastic place. We get nothing but really cool projects to work on. But there are a lot of companies out there. It's good to take a look and see what might be a really good fit for you. But most places do offer internships. We love having interns come in. You definitely get to learn a lot in a production setting. And it's just a neat way to sort of like see kind of what it's like to do this for a living while actually being really kind of immersed in it. So the information for internships, I believe we do have on our website, and I'll make sure to include links to all that kind of stuff. So you're welcome to look into that. All right. So do you guys have any other questions, or do you want to look at anything again? Actually, I did say that I would go back and and just show you guys again. That showed up a little bit later. So just based on that Maya file I just had open. So you can see that's the environment, and that's Oryx and what have you. All right. Well, my time is just about up on this. Do you guys have any last minute questions I can answer? The other thing I want to say too is that even after this is finished, you are welcome to continue to shoot any questions that you have my way, and I'll be happy to answer them. And I'll get back to you as best I can. I am actually fully in production right now on a project, so there might be a slight delay, but please keep the questions coming, and like I said, I'll carve out time to take a look and get back and answer as best as possible. So, all right, here's a good question. You mentioned using Maya and Houdini. How do you get assets from one app to another? Do we use Alembic? We absolutely use Alembic. So, Alembic files are in layman's term, the best way I would basically describe it is it's a file format. It's a way of getting geometry that's animated. It doesn't have to be animated, but it's a way of getting geometry and animation to move between software packages that are that use their own file systems and what have you that are not necessarily compatible with each other. So Alembic is how we publish our animation for lighting. So what it is, it's just a what's called a geometry cache. So it pretty much takes you can think about it almost like a snapshot from frame to frame to frame of where the points are in each piece of geometry, and it compresses it into a big file that is readable by lots of different software. So it's something that we started using quite a bit about, I don't know, I want to say like maybe 7 or 8 years now that we've been using that. But we do definitely use that. And that's a great question. All right. All right, guys. Well, I had a great time talking to you guys. Again, please keep the questions coming, and feel free to reach out. We will make sure that we post all the links to Autodesk, and I'll do a little bit of a write up also to sort of recap some of the things that we talked about. But the great thing about what is happening with Thirsty Minds, I feel, is it's just that it's fantastic to bring a bunch of people together who have a love of games, who have a love of creating art. You don't have to go into this as a career, but if you choose to, this is a great resource to start to get your feet under and learn a bit about, because I think what you're going to find is you're going to find a lot of people willing to help you along the way. I certainly count myself among those type of people. So, I had a lot of help when I was learning, and it makes a big difference. And this information and software being, pretty much so free these days, is really, that was most of the battle, because, again, back in the day of, starting this, the software, it would be cheaper to buy a house. Let's put it that way. So, and with that, I am going to sign off because I actually have to get back to work. So thank you guys, and I will be around, so please reach out.